Welcome back to The Remote Life. My name is Han Talbot, also known as Handmaid's World, and today, in collaboration with Native Teams, we'll be chatting with Skerdi Sino. Based in Tirana, Skerdi is Vice President of Demand Generation at Native Teams, a global payment solution for freelancers, remote workers, and international businesses. In this episode, we talk about balancing business and travel responsibilities, as well as the Native Teams product and the services they offer to support digital nomads and remote workers in managing their finances and employment agreements. So grab a coffee, a tea, or something stronger, and let's get started. Welcome back to the Remote Life podcast. Skerdi, how are you?
I'm feeling great, Han. Thank you for having me.
Well, first things first, let's kick things off. Tell us about you and your remote life journey so far.
Well, I'm Skerdi, obviously, and I've been a remote worker for the past 5 years. Currently, I'm working at a company called Native Teams as a head of performance marketing, but I also live a digital nomad lifestyle, and I'm with the Digital Nomad Association of Albania. It has been quite the journey, truth to be told. When I first discovered remote work, it was a weird concept. In Albania, we only discovered remote work after the pandemic. Before the pandemic, I seriously doubt that there was any company who was applying it as a model. But then the pandemic came and everyone had to go and work from home because of the quarantine and everything else. And then is when I thought to myself, wait a minute, why don't you work for an international company for maybe a better salary? Because for those of the viewers who don't know, Albania is a not very rich country to say, so the salaries here weren't as lucrative as you would think. And I thought, why don't you work for an international company? And that's where I embraced myself and I immersed myself into the remote work movement. And since then, I've been a part of it. I've been a fan of it, and I'm trying to enable as many people as possible to get into the movement.
Honestly, Albania is absolutely it's found a special place in my heart, I have to say, for remote working. It's still so underrated as a country, I think. And as far as initiatives, I mean, I don't know if you want to talk about this super quickly, but I would say as far as kind of remote working initiatives, people are kind of on it. People are generally quite on it with kind of the needs for remote professionals, remote workers, and then let's not forget the amazing destinations you have to choose from in Albania. So I don't know if you want to talk a little bit more about that at all, or.
Definitely, definitely. I would love to talk about that one. So, remember we did an event 2 years ago. It was 2022. That's where we met. We met here in
It's
Tirana,
crazy.
Albania. Yeah, 2 years ago. It is crazy indeed. And Albania has emerged not only as a destination for tourism, but also as a key destination for digital nomads worldwide. The reasons are very simple. I would start with the fantastic nature that God has gifted us here in Albania. There you find the perfect mixture between, mountains, seaside, fields, and everything else. Everything is beautiful and everything is very close to one another, so you can experience different changes into landscape in a 2 hour drive. You can catch everything, which is something that is not easy to find worldwide. There is a culture mix between due to the history, there's a culture mix between Italian, Greek, Turkish, and that transitions also into food. For all of the foodies that are listening or looking at the or viewing at the podcast. So you find here so much, and then there is the culture, the individual culture, because again, Albania, as from a historical perspective, we are very different from all of the other countries in Europe. The language is completely different. We have some core values nurtured into family and hospitality, which is something that the digital nomads are looking to find when they visit a place. They want to feel welcome, they want to feel taken care of, they really much appreciate the help that the locals give them to discover more about the country itself. So this is how Albania became a destination for the digital nomads. And as far as remote work per se goes, it all started with the BPOs coming and seeing this as a potential market for developing different skills and different positions. And right now, after the pandemic, more companies are coming globally because the talent is here. So they are just, adding Albania on the map of recruitment per se.
100%. I think hospitality is such a huge part of it and how it's done properly. And I will say that I think of again, the events that you yourself have put on with native teams have been really amazing, honestly, for bringing the community together, bringing government officials together, bringing locals together. I personally think you've done an amazing job so far with all of that. So do you want to just tell us a little bit more about native teams and how this all ties in together as well, these events?
Okay, thank you. First of all, thank you very much for the kind words. We try to do a lot, but without the support of like-minded individuals like yourselves and all of our collaborators, this wouldn't be possible. So I would like to thank you as well for this one. As far as native teams goes, first of all, I would like to say that when I started working for native teams, I was like so fascinated by the brand, by the mission, by the vision of the company. So I went into the interview and I was asking more questions than people were
Mm,
asking me because I was so curious about the company. So native teams basically is revolutionizing the freelance world and the employment world by being a very, very safe and innovative payment provider for freelancers, and then offering employer of record solutions for all of those employers who want to hire people internationally, but they want to be compliant around it. And then it's giving individuals the freedom to choose the setup of their employment,
mm,
maximizing earnings while being compliant, which is something that is so underrated nowadays because freelancers worldwide are working for themselves, but at the same time, they are not getting all of the benefits that they could get. This is because, of course, going through bureaucratic processes, calculations, you need an accountant, you need a lawyer, you need a lot of things. Native Teams is facilitating all of these processes for the freelancers and enabling them, freelancers and remote workers, and enabling them to only worry about work itself, about being creative, about doing what they do best, while everything else is taken care from Native Teams.
that's really awesome because, yeah, I feel it's one of those things that people don't necessarily either know about or don't realize they've got to be aware of. But there are just always little, I feel, hidden details and things that people don't necessarily think about that when they think, oh, I want to be a freelancer or I want to be a digital nomad or a remote worker or whoever it is, that they've just sort of, yeah, they don't quite realize, and then they go, oh my gosh, I didn't realize I've got to think about this extra thing. I thought I'd just book a plane ticket and then. Is there anything else, I guess, that you think that people don't necessarily know, or maybe there's like a hidden thing that people don't think about when it comes to, I suppose, just general like logistics when it comes to this sort of longer term
Well,
travel,
when
let's
it
say.
comes to the longer term travel, and we see it now more than ever that digital nomads are connecting with certain
Mm,
countries, right? And they want to stay more, they want to become slow mads, they want to nomad, but they want to stay like maybe a year, or they want to move their fiscal residency to a country which they feel connected to. And this is where they need to think about, do they want to approach it from a migration perspective in terms of having a mobility service, having a visa for a country, residing fiscally in a country, and then keep moving the way that they should. I was having a conversation with digital nomad crew, Facebook groups and WhatsApp groups. This is
mm,
usually when you find the gold because there is where the feedback is coming
mm,
from. And a lot of people are actually thinking of moving their fiscal residency to a specific country that they have found affiliation with. And in order to do that, they will definitely need some sort of visa sponsorship, which are not really easy to get in terms of having the mobility. The first solution for nomads is always the digital nomad visa. In most of the countries where the visa is applied, it's fairly easy to get. You just fill a form and then you can move, because most of these countries are countries who have the need of digital nomads to go over there for PR purposes and everything else. And a lot of governments are pushing the narratives as well. So this is all in the benefits of the digital nomads who can move freely. But then all of the digital nomad visas have limitations. Have limitations in
mm,
terms of timeline, have limitations in terms of some of them have double taxation, some of them do not have double
mm,
taxation, which are things that the nomad should always think about, especially when they have the long-term stays, right? And then there are service providers that are offering mobility and visa sponsorships, so a nomad can fully move their fiscal residency to a country of their choosing, just like Native Teams is doing, just like Native Teams is facilitating this with our mobility service. And I believe that this opens a new world for the digital nomads, both from a sense of being part of a country, even though we are all citizens of the world in the end, as all of the nomads are, but also making very good decisions from a fiscal perspective in terms of optimizing your taxes by choosing the country you pay your taxes to.
You've brought up a question for me that I feel like you'll probably also kind of have a bit of a laugh about. I feel like over the last couple of years, because even funny enough, when just before we met, I was having a conversation with somebody around this. I feel like the term digital nomad has got very kind of confused and a bit sort of like molded into something that maybe it's not. And someone was saying to me the other day that they actually think, for example, that the digital nomad visa is not necessarily intended for a digital nomad, but more for a remote worker. Like you mentioned, could be more for somebody who wants to move there like longer term, right? So, but that's technically not what a digital nomad is for a lot of people. What for you, out of interest, is the difference between a digital nomad and, let's say, a remote professional?
Okay. I would agree with you on this one. I think that there's a lot of misconception happening around it,
Mm,
but now now digital nomad term is a pop culture term. So
mm.
everyone kind of wants to feel part of the vibe, which is good. It's a positive feeling. So, it's something that should be
The vibes are
advertised in terms of
vibing.
promoted, definitely. When it comes to it, I divide it because also there are some short-term stays
Mm,
that I would say that they are more touristic rather than
mm,
nomadism, right?
mm,
So you go and you jump from country to country. You basically you go to the best bars, you eat, you drink, you party hard, which is always good for the health, you need to be happy. But at the same time, that is more like a touristic activity, the
mm,
way that I see it, right? So right
mm,
now, what is happening is that you have multiple people who are traveling a lot because they have a remote work, they are working remotely, they can afford to travel, so they are traveling a lot, but they are doing very short-term stays. They can be considered digital nomads. In my book, they are not. Why?
mm,
Because in my mind, a digital nomad is an individual who not only goes to the country, discovers the country, experiences the country, but it's a person who provides value and shares know-how, do-how with the local community and gets something from the local community and gives something to the local community. Not money per se, right? Because a
mm,
tourist comes, gives money, enjoys, it's good, like we love tourists as well, right? But for me, what I would consider a digital nomad is a person that arrives, provides value, gets value, nurtures and lives a sign or leaves an impact on a country, and then they leave and then they go and then they leave an impact on another country and then they might return, they lay some small roots which they can find as they move around the world, they can come back to. I'll make you an example. Multiple digital nomads visited Albania during the Tirana Nomad Fest
mm,
2022, right? A few of them came back, but they all came back into short bursts, like a week, 5 days, 3 days, right? They met a few people, they left. Then there were a few of the nomads who came. They didn't stay long as well. They stayed like 3 weeks, 4 weeks, but they opened new job positions. They gathered much from the culture. Right now, they are spokesperson for Albania in the digital nomad world. So that is what I would consider a nomad. A person that comes, gets from the culture, gives to the culture, and then they, of course, continue their journey. And then you have slow mads, which stay a little bit longer in the countries because that's the pace of their life. Truth to be told, for me individually, I tried last year to be a fast nomad per se. I discovered that that is not really my style. Why? Because you are constantly in the move and you don't have time to really bond with the locals, to really discover
mm,
the ins and outs of a city, the ins and outs of a country. Basically, the first week you're just a tourist. You're going, of course, to the most famous places. You're waiting in line on the big lines. You don't have the time maybe to sit down and have that deep conversation with a local random person who works at the boats to discover
mm.
their history, to get deep deep insight, right? That's what I think that for me, digital nomadism is nomadism. Is when you go to a country, you settle a little bit. Of course, you have to respect Schengen, the 3 months, the regulations, and everything else. But this is what I would consider nomadism per se. And then you have the remote workers who are just trying to move to a country, which is also something that you need. You make a choice, you move to a country. And a lot of them are saying that we are digital nomads per se. It's not a problem. I don't know the definition. but it's not a problem. Everyone can consider themselves a nomad. Being a nomad is good. So, it's good for the health.
A quick disclaimer. I think about the fact that when I first heard about the digital nomad term, it was very much people who were sort of working from cafes in, say, for example, where I was, London, and it was more just having the flexibility to be able to take your work anywhere. Now I feel like the term has sort of become not synonymous, but I suppose, yeah, it's pop culture term. It's a bit more synonymous with like a backpacker who can also work, right? But instead of, say, working in a hostel, they work online. I know for myself, for example, it hasn't really been a term that I've necessarily identified with. There's a reason it's called the Remote Life Podcast, right? Because digital nomad doesn't quite fit with how I potentially view myself when it comes to it. And I feel like when I think of now how digital nomad has sort of become known in, say, like mainstream culture, online, it makes me think of like burnout almost. Because again, as you said, you're traveling fast, you're going to all the popular sites. You're not really getting to know the feel of where it is that you're going. You don't necessarily learn language, nothing like that. All while also trying to balance what I assume is an online job or business or whatever it is you're doing, I guess. What was your experience of the fast travel? Is there anything that you would maybe recommend for people, or maybe that people need to be more aware of, especially as remote professionals and remote workers, about that faster travel?
Well, when it comes to, and I've had the discussion with multiple season nomads, people who have been nomading for years, they went through the same route, let's say, in the first years, due to you being very excited about being a nomad and everything else, you do tend to travel a lot. But after maybe 1 year or a couple of years, you discover that, wait, this is not quite working for me because it needs a lot of energy to do all of that traveling. Only changing countries will get you sick. Like, will get you sick because you change weather, you change location. So people who travel a lot and end up getting sick a lot as well, taking from the
Yeah.
small things. So that initial energy, I believe that is something that everyone should use. Do that first year of fast traveling, because you need that experience in your life as well. You need that craziness. Like when I realized how many flights I had last year, I was like, yeah, so you need that part of your life. You need that experience, and then you will realize that you need to slow a little bit down, right? And that is not there is nothing wrong with that. My advice would be not do it like I did it because my route was like a lot of countries that without an organization or anything. Maybe do something when you jump, from country to country, not on a very long distance. Or I had to return many times back in Albania due to restriction, but also to the fact that had stuff to do in my home country, right? So maybe just mapping the route would be something good. And then for a lot of people, I've heard that it feels like they are doing a step back if they return and chill home. And I've heard this from remote workers working abroad, from digital nomads, for also from people choosing migration per se, right? People, they feel like they're doing a step back, returning back home, which is in my books is something that is wrong. Why? Because we all need time to return back to our roots, to meditate, to think about life in general. And we all have stuff that we might need to do. We have property, business might be registered somewhere. You need to do stuff. So eventually, taking time to reflect and taking time to detach from the nomad lifestyle as well is not something that will take you a step back. So there shouldn't be any anxiety either about traveling or also about returning, because I see that sometimes people are like, oh, I'm staying too much on this place, I need to move. There is a sort of anxiety building up, more than the sense of adventure. It's a sort of like anxiety, like I'm staying too much here. And then social media as well, and nomad content creators, they're like, oh, look where I'm here today and look where I'm here tomorrow, and you feel like, oh, maybe I should try this one. I believe it should be natural, not induced by, oh, Han is in Spain at the moment, why I'm not in Spain. It shouldn't be like that, right? It should be more like naturally, it should come from the heart rather than, oh my God, I'm missing out. That FOMO shouldn't be around the nomad lifestyle.
It's funny you were saying about nomad creators, and I was like, oh no, I swear that's
Yeah, it's
not my
like, oh
intention.
no.
But it is so true, because that's exactly where I was getting to, and that's why I'm really happy someone else has also mentioned about how it's not just about carbon footprint when it comes to nomading, it's also about the digital footprint, i.e. what it is that you are posting on social media, what you are telling other people, like the perceptions. Because I went through probably 2 years where I was still posting the actual location I was in on my profiles. So I thought, oh, people want to know where I am, they can go look at what's on my Instagram profile. No, I still had people messaging me going, so where are you? Because people don't think that actually not all posts are live too. So it's kind of like a funny sort of mixture of responsibilities in a way too, for sure. And I'm so happy you mentioned that, because absolutely that was something that was coming up for me. Whether it's people thinking that you are in these countries as you're posting and getting FOMO, as you said. I've been doing content for 10 years and I still freak myself out at what I can pull off in my content. Like, oh, that's not where I was. That's not the vibe. Like, naughty Photoshop. And then also, I guess it is also being able to show off or not show off. Hang on a minute. It's about being able to be more mindfully aware of what it is we are posting at the end of the day, because while we might be happy with our photo, I think sometimes we also forget the influence that we do have on other people, whether that is our best friend from air quote back home, or a nomad like you mentioned at an event who is maybe just starting out and not quite sure what to do. But you mentioned, I'd be curious to know if there's any other sort of tips and tricks that you maybe had just for the remote professionals in general about managing your lifestyle, because I think also people forget that travel in itself, whether you are based somewhere or not, it is stressful on your body. I've been doing this way too long now and I still have subconscious stress about having to get a flight in the morning or just making sure I get to the flight, even though I've done this many times and I'll be absolutely fine. There is still that subconscious stress that then does leak into the rest of your day. Like, for example, when I pick a destination, it probably takes me about a week to fully settle in. So then, if you're doing just a week in a destination, you're not fully going to be able to get to know that destination because you're still recovering from that day of travel. Is there anything that you've sort of picked up over the years as a remote professional that you would maybe recommend for people, whether that's like an item you have, whether that's a routine that you have? Is there anything that you've picked up?
Well, truth to be told, like I had my period of very frequent traveling, right?
Mm.
And I told you that that was a little bit too much in terms of like you would get sick very often. You would not be able to see a lot. You would not be able to fully emerge and embrace the city and embrace the locals and embrace the country that you were visiting. So that's when I just started taking slowly, truth to be told.
Mm.
I haven't yet found a recipe on how you can quickly recover from a flight and from an experience, because you are also changing realities very fast. Let's say that you go on an island. I spent a month in the Canary Islands last year. Everything there was so slow paced
Mm.
that people would wake up, breakfast was being served at 11, and then they
Mm.
went for a siesta at 2 p.m., like, working 3 hours and then sleeping. And then, everything was so slow paced. Then immediately I come from there to Tirana, which is my city. I was born here in the capital of Albania, and here the speed is completely different. The car horns at 8 a.m., like everyone is like, beep, beep,
Mm.
open the road, you idiot. Like completely the change. And I needed, like, tell you, I am born and raised here. I shouldn't need a time of adaptation. But after coming from the island, I was in Lanzarote. After coming from the island, I needed like a week because my head started hurting the first day I was here, because like too many cars, a lot of people,
Yeah.
you see too many people in the roads. In the Canary Islands, it was like you would see three random people like just
Yeah.
chatting over there. No people whatsoever, right? So this is the type of changes that happen, and you need to just give yourself time to immerse into something and then to get out of something, right? So this would be my tips and tricks. And chilling, making sure you take your vitamins as well. Right nowadays, if you travel frequently, you need definitely to have a formula of vitamins that you eventually take, especially if you're very active. Like I try to keep myself very active, gym, traveling, moving around all day, and everything else. You need to take care of your body as well, and having a strong mind is also key. So detaching yourselves from these things that cause you anxiety, like for example, you having to travel. Oh, I have to travel because I'm a nomad. Oh, no, not forcing yourself to move just because you're a nomad. If you're feeling like staying somewhere, stay over there. And then when you have a feeling that you want to visit someplace else, then you go. But don't do it for the sake of I need to move because, I need to move.
That's the thing. I feel like there needs to be more conversation around picking places that you actually want to go to as well. it's all very well being able to have the freedom to travel, but if you go places not for the wrong reasons, but if you're not going to a place that you don't even necessarily enjoy, why did you bother? Better to stay somewhere that you really are enjoying. Like, there are a few places I've extended now, and I've really, honestly, been so happy with my decision. But yeah, if you're just going because it looks cool on Instagram, people can also tell. I think people can also tell. We've talked about FOMO, but I think your audiences, whoever is following you, can also tell if you actually didn't enjoy a place as much as you're trying to pretend maybe that you thought you were. I'm curious, where are there any destinations that you've extended in or want to go back to as a remote professional?
Truth to be told, I haven't been nomading in Lisbon. I have only briefly visited for a couple of work-related tasks, events. We went on the Web Summit, and then we went on a couple of company meetings over there, but I really fell in love with the city. There is only one problem. It is too uphill. So if you spend some time on Pink Street drinking a lot of alcohol, the route home, if you're a walker like me, is going to be very difficult for you. So you need to think about that one. But I fell in love with the city. I fell in love with the culture over there. I fell in love with the beauties that are over there. And definitely that can be, I mean, I'm really contemplating and thinking about making it a future destination where I do spend a lot of time over there. Again, fortunately for me, and also fortunately for everyone who chooses to work with native teams and to choose our services, you can make a move like that through our mobility service. You can go and you can spend a lot of time, even you can spend a couple of years depending on the visa that you choose through native teams. And definitely that is something that I'm looking forward to do into the future. So yeah, Lisbon would be my go-to destination. And also I'm trying to get to see countries that we have no, let's say, cultural correlation with as here in Albania, because we have had a lot of Portuguese telenovelas, a lot of Spanish telenovelas, a lot of Brazilian telenovelas. So these are countries that we kind of had a small cultural interaction with. With Italy, we've had a lot,
I
so
love
there's
so
not
much.
much curiosity, not much curiosity on visiting. But maybe countries like, for example, Slovakia or Poland or even Belarus or Armenia, which are countries that we haven't had any, everything would be kind of new for me over there, going and visiting these countries, right? And then, because with these other countries, we have had many exchanges, we have many tourists from these countries as well, so we kind of know the culture, right? So discovering these new things. And then Asia, but I believe that on a different part of my life when I'm maybe richer, I would consider Asia.
Yeah, it's a little bit further to travel, I guess. You need to kind of plan that a little bit better, right?
Yep.
No, that's so interesting though. And I'm so curious to know, do you think we can maybe expect like some more native teams events in some of these countries too?
Definitely. Definitely. So look, native teams by default is a contributor to the remote movement and to the digital nomad movement. We are firm believers that these movements are empowering the individual and making a world a better place. That's why we are supporting and that's why we're creating these events. We are doing the Future is Remote talks. The Future is Remote, as you know, is our brand. We are doing the Future is Remote talks. Currently, we have done them on 12 locations in the region here, so it's mostly in the Balkans and Eastern Europe, but we are planning them on Western Europe as well. We will have a Future is Remote event during the Web Summit week in Lisbon. It will be a networking event. We'll discuss about remote work. We'll discuss about how we can facilitate everything for remote workers worldwide. And then we are having one in Spain in September in Barcelona with Palma Co-Living. We are having that event over there. I will go and we speak about digital nomadism, fiscal residency, and everything else. So we are trying to give back a lot to the remote community as a company. And for this one, I'm very proud because this is a type of work that helps people grow on a daily basis.
No, that all sounds really exciting. And as I said before, I think you guys are honestly, you're really carving your own path in this industry right now. That's it. It honestly is really intriguing to follow what you guys have been up to. And obviously, you've been a really great core part of that, Skerdi. So congrats. And I'm excited to see what you guys do next. To wrap things up, though, fill in the blank, home as well.
Okay. Home is where your loved ones are and where your heart is for me. So as long as you have people who love you, who cherish you, and that you have people who you love and you cherish, there is where home is. Home is not a brick, is not a place, is not a beach, is not anything. Home is people and your being. So your home can be anywhere as long as you are with people who you love and they love you.
Love it. Oh, amazing. Skerdi, thank you so much for joining me on The Remote Life. It's been amazing as always, to chat.
Thank you very much, Han, for having me. And to close, I would like to extend all of the friends of this podcast a discount on native team services, which you would be able to communicate with them later on. If they're freelancers and they want to invoice clients, we have our invoicing and payment solution. If they're company owners and they want to hire people internationally, we have our employer of record solutions. And if they're a digital nomad trying to find or remote worker trying to find more of a permanent placement, we have our mobility service. And if they want to open a UK company, we also have our native company service. So a plethora of services which they all can get on a discounts. Thanks to you, Han, for making this happen.
My pleasure, my pleasure.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of The Remote Life, and thank you, Skerdi, for taking the time to speak with us. You can find links to his profiles below. Thank you so much again for listening, and we can't wait to remote work with you again soon.